Hi folks, I'm Sean from Fidelity Factory and thank you for joining us. Today we are going to be doing an extension to one of the other videos or blog posts you probably have seen around our hazard reporting solution. In the first part, you would have went through the process of building a Sharepoint list that looks something like this for reporting hazards and storing that data in. And then you would have also went through the process of building a Power App. The Power App is a mobile app that captures the details of a hazard and includes the ability to add an attachment, like an image, if you're using the mobile app that you take with your smartphone. And so all this information is going back into the Sharepoint list. So that's really the capture of a hazard, which we covered in the first post. This particular video and accompanying post is going to walk us through extending this to classify hazards as emergencies or not and handle them in the way that we'll be creating a team for collaboration and some notifications as well. So let's get started with continuing the build of this solution. And just to give you a demo of where we left off, if we are reporting a hazard, our form is smart. It picks up, it identifies, I should say, who the currently logged in user is and the current date. And we're going to put in a description of the hazard we see. So in this case, a fire extinguisher requires service and we can attach a file. I'm going to pick our logo. Obviously, if you were really using this app, you would take a picture of the hazard that you see. When you save it, our app writes it back to Sharepoint. We should see that appear in our list momentarily. There it is. So we've got a capture of this particular item that we found. To get set up with this next module along our hazard reporting, we're going to need to have a team created. So you can see here we have our hazards emergency team that's been created. How the solution is going to work is it's going to be adding a new channel into this team for each hazard that's identified as an emergency through the mobile app. We're going to be doing all this in Microsoft Flow. So along with having a team for tracking the emergencies in, which you will need to create at this point if you don't already have one, we're going to be updating the Sharepoint list. So we're going to be adding in a couple columns here. The first being a yes/no column, just called emergency. So there we go. It's a yes/no column. The default value is going to be no. Set as them by default. And we are going to add a choice field in as well. And we're going to call that choice field status. Here we go. And our options are under investigation or resolved, and we'll save that. So we've now got emergency and status set. Our list is ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is access the Flow portal. To do that, we go to flow.microsoft.com, and we're going to be greeted with the screen that we see in front of us here. And we're going to be working in the create area. I would love to go through all of these items on the left nav with you, but we have to stick to our topic. We're going to be creating a new automated flow. So I'm going to choose that option. You can create flows from templates, which I encourage you to look into as well. But in our case, we are going to say, give our new automated flow a name called hazard reporting evaluate. And we want to trigger it when an item is created in Sharepoint. Awesome that that's sitting right there for us. So we can check that off and press create. We have our flow in design mode now. We need to specify which site the list lives on. We chose our incident reporting site and then the hazard report list within that site. That was the one we just added those columns into. So let's move on to our next action. So after the trigger is set, so once a new incident has been identified, we are going to start and wait for an approval. So this is one of the approval actions that are out there. We choose that. The approval type we want is a first to respond pattern. So if we specify a number of people, we are going to take the first response we get from anyone who this approval is assigned to. And our title for this incident report, is this an emergency? And we're going to specify some folks who need to be responsible for the approval. These are the people that handle the emergencies and evaluate hazards to determine whether they are emergencies. So we've got these users we're adding in. So you'll notice we have a few people who are going to receive the approval. And the first one to respond is going to be the one that we will use. So we have some text that we're going to include in the details And it's basically saying that if you approve this hazard, it's going to go down the emergency route in our process, and a few extra things will happen for it. Next, we're going to include a link to the item so that if they are evaluating this and deciding whether or not it's an approval, they can get all the details from back in Sharepoint. And we also have the description so that they'll be able to click on that in the approval itself with those details. So that's great. The next thing we're going to do is add in a condition. You may have worked with these before, very handy. And we're going to evaluate the outcome of our approval. So the condition says, if the outcome is equal to approve, we are going to move this action along. So under this path, if something has been determined to be an emergency, we want to do a few extra things. So we're going to create a channel in Teams. In the team that we created, we want to create a channel. So there's that action for us. So the placeholders we need to provide are, we need to specify the team. And we saw that, we created that and set it up before we got started. And the display name of the team. So we're going to say emergency hazard, and we're going to use the ID from within Sharepoint of the item that was submitted from PowerApps. And that's going to give us a nice naming convention for every channel that's used to manage one of these. We also want to provide a description for our team, and we're going to use the description of the actual issue so that it gives some context if people are looking at the different channels. Moving along, we're going to post a message. So we want people who come to the team to see information in the conversation right away. So if we go to post a message under Microsoft Teams and choose that action, we can do that. We're going to pick our team and the channel. So we don't see the channel. We want to dynamically specify the channel we're posting this to based on the previous action where we created the channel. So we're going to use the ID of that channel we just created. And then we're going to put in a message so that people have some context around what it is that's actually happened. I'm going to switch this action over to HTML in the message part. I have some HTML here. So we're going to put in the ID. We already know the ID, but just to provide that additional context, we'll include it. Then we're going to add in some more information about the hazard that was reported in the mobile app. So we have the description, the latitude and longitude information that we're going to include about this hazard. So we've got all that coming in. And then we're actually going to include a link. So there's our link to item if someone wants to go in and view the incident. So that all looks good. So now we've got some information going into Teams. So we're going to add in one more action, and we're going to send an email in this case. So we want to notify all the stakeholders that this new area has been created for managing this. So if we click on the to action, let's put in some information here. So we have our admins who are all stakeholders in this emergency hazard process. We'll also include the creator. So whoever it was that originally submitted this, we want them to know as well that this channel has been created for their issue. And the subject will be a new emergency hazard is identified. What we're going to do next is provide a link back to that team we created. So we are going to say that this is an HTML message. So you'll notice I expanded the advanced options and said, is HTML? Yes. And we are going to put in a link. And you do that by just putting in an href equal to, and then some quotes. And we'll say open the channel in Teams, and then a closing A tag. We just need to fill in this little bit here in the href between the single quotes. And how we'll do that is go back to Teams. We have the general channel within that, and we're gonna get a link to the channel. So we have a link to the general channel, and from that we can figure out what the link will be to the channel we're dynamically creating. So if we click on that href, we can just paste in that part, the link to the general channel, but we're going to get rid of something. So after we have this channel and a backslash, we're going to select everything in between there and the question mark, just like this. So we have channel, a /, and then we have this this number, this ID, and then another slash, and it says general. We're going to get rid of all of that. And then we're going to use the ID from our previous action where we're creating a channel. So you can see that placeholder goes right in there. One other thing we want to do at this point is add in an action to update the SharePoint item. We have said that this item is in fact an emergency, so we should update the SharePoint list item to indicate that. So if we type in update, an item, you're going to see there's a SharePoint action for that. So this is all pretty straightforward. We're going to choose our incident reporting site. We're going back to the same list that we were working on previously, hazard report. The ID of the item was the item that triggered the whole flow that we're in right now. We're going to get that ID. And then we can see we've got all this other metadata that we need to fill in. So we're going to match up what's previously there. We don't want to update any of that at this point, but we're going to make sure that the current values persist. And we are going to mark this as an emergency. That's really the main point of doing this, and it's going to remain as under investigation. Now that we've added in our update item, we can save this flow. And let's go back and test our work. We go back to our Power App. We can specify a hazard that's out there. And we are going to say a trip hazard at door 1 in building E. We'll attach an image. I'm going to just pick our logo, save that, and let's go have a look in SharePoint. We can see we have a trip hazard at door 1, and we'll notice the default value is no, it's not an emergency and it's under investigation. So those pieces we added at the beginning are working great. And let's go over to Outlook. So we have a new flow approval that is waiting for us. We can see that it's telling us there's a pending approval. This approval would have went out to all 3 people who we specified in that approval action. We can see that it's letting us know that if we approve this action, it's going to be routed for emergency handling. Otherwise, it's going to take the standard flow. We can actually click on the link. We can see it's showing us those details. Clicking on the link gives us, as an approver, all the additional information. We can even look at the image here of the hazard. So we are pretty certain that this is in fact an emergency. So we will mark it as such. And let's go back to our flow. So we saved all that work, and we can see what's happening with the flow. It looks like that particular flow ran successfully. So I went back to the flow's landing page. We can see that everything looks to have ran well. It did evaluate our approval action, and it brought us down this path where it created a channel, it posted a message, it sent an email, and then it updated that item back in SharePoint. So let's retrace our steps from the flow to see what's happened here. So we now have emergency hazard 18 as a channel in our team, and we can see that there's been a message posted. Perfect, just like we planned. We can see that the metadata that we kind of merged in from SharePoint is there. So we have that information, and then we can also click on our link. Right from within Teams, it brings up all those details to reference that original item that was submitted from the Power App. All that looks great. So let's go back to our mailbox. So we have that email that's appeared. A Teams channel has been created for collaboration on this issue. It's this new emergency hazard. So if we want to go to Teams directly, we can do that from our email. So we built that smart link. We're going to jump over there. Let's have a look and see if that link worked. Nice. It jumped us right into Teams from our email. So that's kind of a nice way for someone who perhaps wasn't the approver or the creator of that particular hazard, or they're getting brought back into the flow with this notification, and now they know where that channel is. The last thing we did was we went back to the actual item in SharePoint and we marked the emergency status to yes. So let's refresh this and have a look and see if that's changed. And in fact, it has. So we know at this point that we have a hazard that's been identified. So that closes the loop on our flow enhancement, the first of 2. Thank you for spending the time with us in this video, and look forward to the other flow that's also part of this solution.